Well, I'm glad because mine didn't work. I'm glad yours did. All right. Case 20 of the Book of Equanimity is the case we're working on, but I want to this case, similar case from the gate of this gate, and then segue into today's. So, Joshu earnestly asked Nansen, "What is the way?" Nansen answered, "The ordinary mind is the way." Joshu asked, "Should I direct myself toward it or not?" Nansen said, "If you try to turn toward it, you go against it." Joshu asked, "If I do not try to turn toward it, how can I know that it is the way?" Nansen answered, "The way does not belong to knowing or not knowing. Knowing is delusion. Not knowing is a blank consciousness. When you have really reached the true way beyond all doubt, you will find it as vast and boundless as the great empty firmament. How can it be talked about on the level of right and wrong?" At these words, Joshu was suddenly enlightened. Today's koan is case 20. Jizo's not knowing is the most intimate. Preface to the assembly. A profound talk of entering the principle derides the three and rends the four. The broad way of Choan runs 7 vertically and 8 horizontally. Suddenly opening your mouth to speak decisively and lifting your foot to tread firmly, you should hang up your traveling bag and bowl and break your staff. Tell me, who is such a person? Main case. Attention. Master Jizo asked Hogan, "Where have you come from?" Hogan replied, "I pilgrimage aimlessly." "What is the matter of your pilgrimage?" asked Jizo. "Not knowing," replied Hogan. Jizo said, "Not knowing is the most intimate." At that, Hogan experienced great enlightenment. Appreciatory verse. Right now, investigation replete. It's the same as before. Utterly free from minute obstacles, one comes to not know. Shorts, short, longs, long. Cease pruning and grafting. According with high, according with low. Even is even, and even is even and content. Each is even and content. A family's manner of abundance or thrift is used freely according to circumstances. Fields and lands, excellent, sportive, one's feet go where they will. The matter of 30 years' pilgrimage, a clear transgression against one's pair of eyebrows. So this koan tends to turn into a Zen cliche. So people say this all the time. Yeah, not knowing is most intimate. Not knowing is most intimate. Not knowing is most intimate. I'm most intimate with not knowing. But what is this actually saying? Because it's not about any form of at all. That's different from not knowing. It's knowing in its proper perspective. Or Okay, we're back. Hopefully. One of those Zoom days. Hey, Don. You quit. Oh, I'm speaking. You're frozen on my screen. I'm not sure if you're speaking. I can't hear you. Oh, now I hear you. There you are.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. All right. So this not knowing is a deceptively simple koan. It sounds simple. It sounds like it's, oh, I don't have to know anything. And people kind of breathe a sigh of relief. That's what Zen's all about, is not knowing stuff. I'm going, no. That is not what this is saying. So, and this was a very pithy exchange, because one of the Zen trick questions is, where have you come from? And this question comes up in many koans. And oftentimes people get hooked by that because they're not really understanding. If you're being asked that question by a Zen master, beware. That is not a simple question. But Hogan doesn't take the bait. So where have you come from? He gives the perfect Zen answer. I pilgrimage aimlessly. In other words, this is the opposite of the spiritual search. He's not looking for anything. He's just experiencing everything that everything he's encountering just as it is. So there's no purpose, there's no goal, there's nothing that he's trying to do or change or become, or all those things that we do in spiritual practice. He does it aimlessly. I just go where I go, and I am where I am. And so, truly Zen, truly that in the moment experience that he's speaking of. But Jizo tests him further with a very clear testing question. Okay, it's like, good Zen student, but let's see if you really know what this means. What is the master of your pilgrimage? Do you have some reason for doing this pilgrimage? Are you trying to get something? Are you trying to go somewhere? Are you trying to compare? Are you trying? What up, dog? What's this aimlessly stuff you're doing? But again, Hogan's answer is absolutely perfect, absolutely spot on with Zen. Now, some translations he responds with "I don't know," which I think is a problematic answer. But in the original Chinese, there's no "I" in that sentence. That is a English construction of that sentence. The direct translation of the characters is not knowing. So the "I" would be inferred because that's because of the person who's speaking, that he's speaking about himself. So they don't have to. The same thing happens in Japanese. They don't do a lot of self-referencing in their sentences. Which happens in Chinese as well. But the answer is not knowing. And Jizo replies to Hogan's answer is not knowing. Jizo replies, not knowing is the most intimate. So either, and there are all these kinds of knowings that we have. We have that which we know, or knowledge, or and people arm themselves with a bunch of stuff that they pile in their brains. We go to school, or we study trivia so we can go on a game show and win lots of money. So we have all of this knowledge, and the more we have, the more we think, the better we think we are. And that tends to be kind of a status thing.
So for about the last half year, I've been juggling something related to this, which is I go to explanation to disconnect from my experience.
Mm.
So my attempts to formulate things in a way allows me to engage the part of my brain that lets me ignore my actual experience that I'm trying to explain.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is what, and sometimes that is not necessarily a good or a bad thing. Because sometimes people have emotional reactions to experience that are not related to what's real. So sometimes you need a little bit more of explanation, a little context, something to help with, so that the experience doesn't become this trauma.
It can be good, it can be bad. I have taken it to an unhealthy level.
Yeah, and I love to, and I think that certainly, at least in the house I was raised in, because my parents prized education, and so they would never answer my question. They would say, "Go look it up," and we had, the World Book encyclopedias from way back when, every possible dictionary that my mother could, find. So I was in the habit of gaining knowledge that I learned to love to read the dictionary, because I'd find that one word, but then I'd look at the words surrounding it, or I'd get lost in the etymology of that particular word, and then I'd just want more and more information about that word. So yes, you can completely disrupt, if you will. It's not that you don't have the direct experience, but you disrupt experiencing the experience by covering it with all kinds of layers of so-called knowledge, or ways of making yourself look smart. So that is not what this is. The opposite of that. This is not, knowledge like of that is not bad, but how are you using it?
Can you build more what most intimate is,
Yeah, I
is
think.
talking about?
Yeah, because I think that what happens is, we not knowing something is usually difficult. It's troubling for us. We want to know what it is, and especially if it's something urgent, like let's say a medical diagnosis. Something is wrong, seriously wrong, and you're waiting for the tests to come back, or the doctor to tell you, or you don't know what's going on with your body. And that experience of that not knowing does bring you into what it feels like to not know something, to that longing to not be in that space of not knowing. So there is an intimacy. That's one painful experience of not knowing, but also not knowing is the realm of the best freedom you can experience, because you're not trying to make it something. You're not trying to make it into a story. You're not trying to make it into an explanation or something that you can talk about. You're in a way, you're having that experience, and you don't have a story to tell about it. You don't have a way of explaining it. And we've all had that, because people will say, "Well, what was that like?" And going, I can't explain it. We've all had experiences where it's just beyond our ability to put it into words, and that's because it was such a deep. Usually, it's a very deep experience that words are just not sufficient enough. The story is not sufficient to really explain what that experience was. So, and you have to understand that words are always late to the game. They're always after the fact. They're never in the moment, because your brain takes time to formulate those stories and those words. So you have the experience first, before knowledge, before perception. And the perception, or the story, the knowledge, the words to explain it, always comes later. So this not knowing is the natural way of things happening. It was the way our lives happen. The experience first, story later. And usually the story is wrong. And the farther away from the experience and our memories, it gets wronger. So, because our memories are just not linear in that way.
Or we hijack our memories for a purpose.
Yes, right.
And
We become revisionists.
yeah, it's almost impossible not to do.
Yeah, it is. He's right. We all because where that memory is happening when now from that you had that experience. So it is now being filtered through who you are now, and it's located in different parts of the body. It's not located just in your brain. So I know I walk into. Since I've been in a department store, but I remember walking into a department store the last time, and I was just struck with it. I happened to walk into the perfume section. It was like right at the front door. I guess that's how they get you. They hit you with all those overwhelming smells, and instantly went back to that's my grandmother's perfume. My grandmother's been dead for 30 years, so but that memory was obviously located in my nose. That it brought back the story, and because she always wore the same but a very distinct smell. Yeah.
I'm curious about that specific thing that you described.
Hmm?
Because one thing I think about with this stuff is like, there's our experience, and then, as you said, our story on top of that. And in that context, your experience was you experienced a smell.
Mm-hmm.
Would the grandma's perfume be the story?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's some brain science on this one. Our ability to tie emotions and feelings and connection to smell is present already at 6 months. We don't have the story form of memory until about 6 years old. So they are different mechanisms, and smell is a very base. The words came much later.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I mean that at first it's the smell that I experience.
It's pre-verbal.
That was pre-verbal.
Yeah.
Then what that smell reminded me of came next, and then all the stories,
Yeah.
all the memories of my grandmother, cascade.
Whether she's good or bad, for example.
Yeah.
Whether it's a good memory or a bad memory, or
Right. I suppose my revisionist memories of my grandmother are all good.
yeah.
She was my first piano teacher. She was a concert pianist. So I, my whole musical, background started with her. So that I hold in the space of gratitude. But, I suppose she had to discipline me as a child because I was a smart aleck. She was always telling me to. So I use knowledge as a weapon at that age. I probably still do.
So, one question. Things that's tied to not knowing that I work on is curiosity, because of course if you know, that's in the way of curiosity.
Yeah.
But this cone does not seem to be describing that he's very curious.
Well, that's another aspect. But I think it allows for curiosity because you've emptied yourself of no. So if you're going into a situation thinking you know everything, you're not going to learn anything
I
new.
never do that.
I do. Whereas if you can't, what is it the saying? You can't fill an already full cup. You can't put anything in an already full cup. However that goes, I'm sure I'm misquoting that horribly. But if you have emptied yourself out of any preconceptions or the so-called knowledge that you think you have, you're then open and completely receptive to any new information that is being imparted or any new experience in this case, because he's talking about experiences. He's pilgrimaging, meaning he's going around to different Zen centers, and that's kind of what Zen students do before they start to teach. So they'll finish their formal studies. They will go off and do their pilgrimage or go off and live in, in a hut somewhere out in the mountains. But that's after they've done their formal study. So at this point, Hogan and Jizo are pretty contemporary, because Hogan was the founder of the Hogan School, which was one of the 5 schools of Buddhism that started in China. So this is the golden era, the Tang Dynasty period that this was happening. So a very important teacher. Hogan became a very important teacher. At this point, he's still a student of Jizo, who preceded him. So this is this was Hogan's enlightenment experience. But he was still pretty advanced as a Zen student at this point. He was not a new monk. He was doing this late pilgrimage and had this experience. So this not knowing does not exclude knowing. It does let you drop knowing and be open to the experience. Or the place of knowing is post-experience. The experience always comes first. And to be completely empty of any preconceived ideas is the only way you can have the direct experience without those ideas interfering, which is very possible to get. We've all been, had that experience where you've been sitting for a long time, either in zazen or just sitting around the house, and you're just staring off into nothingness, and you're just zoned out. I guess it's the California word for it. You've zoned out, and then you come to, and you're like, where was I? What was I thinking? What was I doing? That's that seeing, non-seeing that they talk about in the commentary of this koan, that you're awake, alert, but you're not forming stories about what you're seeing. You're just having the experience. And you knew you were sitting there that entire time. You knew you weren't asleep, but you had no story that was attached to what you've experienced for the last few minutes or seconds or however long you realize that you've not really been thinking about or making yourself know about. You're just experiencing. So that's what this not knowing is. It's not that you're willfully ignorant or choosing to not be educated. It is just you drop these stories about knowing everything or knowing anything, and just have the experience and just really completely immerse yourself in that experience.
So going back to the experience that you described, I'm very curious. Like in that specific context, right? Like, and perhaps because it's a pleasurable association, the removal of that association, the story, would in some way like take away. Like it's like a pleasant thing sometimes, right? Like you remember your grandmother, and I wonder like how the Zen experience, if it is always like, hey, we've dropped all association, then you would never remember your grandmother, right? Like how do you square?
Yeah, this doesn't mean that you drop your entire humanity, because it's a natural part of the brain to remember things, and that remembering, putting things back together, is what our brain is good at, and we learn from that. It's we didn't get to the top of the food chain by forgetting, how to do that. So obviously there's nothing wrong with that. That's not what this koan is saying. It is just describing what the order in which things naturally occur, which is really how I'm seeing this. That the order is experience first, story later, and is contrived. We make that up. That is not to say that the effects of the experience also happen first. So I don't, because what tends to happen is that people will victim blame. It's like, well, you made up that story about what happened to you. Trauma is trauma. If you've been hurt, you've been physically or mentally or psychologically hurt, that is the experience. That's already there. Yeah, your story about it may exacerbate or help heal that trauma. The trauma still needs to be taken care of. So I don't, the way people, I've heard people use this not knowing as a weapon. So be careful of that, even with yourself, that, yeah, we do make up the stories after the fact, but victim blaming either yourself or others with that as a weapon is not at all helpful because the trauma was real.
So how does one get there?
That's the work. So yeah, that's the work. So I appreciate the fact that in Shishin's commentary, he talked about this other case. Where is it? I'll have to do it from memory because I'm not seeing it. The monk asked the teacher, what is the Buddha? And his teacher says, I want you to practice that. And that's his answer. So it is in practice. It doesn't happen because we're not, especially not in this culture. I don't know if I only know this culture that I'm living in now. We're very storied. You're expected to have an explanation. You're expected to have an answer. You're expected to come prepared. You're expected all those expectations that come with the corporate world that I worked through. You never went into a meeting not knowing. What was say again, Don?
Nothing.
Oh, nothing. Okay. Okay. So that expectation. So we tend to overcompensate by knowing more than we probably need to because you don't know what's going to come up in these meetings. So it's like you got to go unprepared. You got to have all this stuff. You got to have all this knowledge, and and we admire those people who are just very, very glib with all of their answers. So this culture does not prize the experience first. It's all about the story. It's all about the hero's tale or heroine's tale that we come up with, and there are only 7 different versions of that hero story. So it's very limited in that respect, and our stories about things are usually very limited. And they're also second, third, but never happens that way. Your experiences, you are getting bombarded with all of your senses all the time. And it doesn't, there's no, the only way that gets locked into some sort of linear story is after the fact. Someone has to manipulate that into some sort of order. Pleasant stories, I love writing. Nothing wrong with it, but it's not real. What's real is that experience, that direct experience that you're having. And that is what this one is inviting you or giving you kind of the clue of how to do that. Practice not knowing and having that experience and taking care of that experience. Because that's where the gold is, if you will. The story after the fact may or may not good or bad. So you have that experience and be intimate with it, and that's the hardest part. Is we want to push that away. We want to make it into knowledge. We want to make it into what works, the answer, the want to skip, and we're skipping over the best part. And the truest part is that direct experience. That's the part that really comes before the story. The story, it's okay. It's useful. It's what we need at some point, but it's not the most intimate. The most intimate aspect of your life is your direct experience of your life, and not the story about your life, which always happened after the fact.
I have a question.
Yes.
You have to answer this,
But I didn't.
And I'm speaking, to like artists, whether you're a screenwriter, a writer, a visual artist, a media, whatever, putting stories together is part of like trade, it's what we do. And so that part of us is very active. But curiosity is, so with this intimation of the intimate, that comes, how does that inform our story making later? Can it? And
Of course.
Can it also open a view for people that experiences our stories, open a view of, okay, here's a story, but the story is not your usual shtick. I'm just thinking, it's not that I want to use it, but I'm thinking, how does it like permeate everything that creative people do?
Well, it can't help but permeate. I mean, that's the process. Artists, have to have a practice of creating art, which is usually nonverbal. So it's that direct experience, and then it goes directly from that nonverbal experience into the expression of whatever that art is.
Okay.
So that's the language of the artist. It's still after the fact. So that direct experience is what everybody has. This is a universal experience. It's not just, you don't have that experience just because you're a Zen practitioner. Everybody has that experience. Everyone has the experience first and the story later,
But
or the expression
of
of it.
Then they don't have the experience.
But they're not aware of the experience,
Okay.
but they have the experience.
Yeah.
So-
But without awareness, it's like it never happened.
Well, it might be like it never happened. Bye, Sean. Thank you. Thanks for helping set up. No one can escape the experience. It is true that you may not have the awareness of the experience, but you will always. You will usually. I think it gets expressed, either in words or in art or in some way, because we are our living experience, and this is, there's no way not to express that. Whether it's an expression that works or not, that's a whole different category question, because I think that people have experiences and then it gets interpreted in very bizarre ways, and people make up stories about that, and then or use it as a way of manipulating. So it can be dangerous in some ways. I think an artist has is that kind of that step between or before verbalization. So the experience expressed in art, then people make up stories about the art. So there's kind of that. There are three levels in that experience, but I think that expression also happens verbally, meaning that there are people that have the experience and then they verbalize it, if they have the vocabulary to express it, and they may not, or they may. It goes through all kinds of historical filters. There's a pattern what you've been through that have an effect on how that story gets told.
One thing that you're triggering with this thought that I've been thinking about, think of someone who's in denial. They're having an experience. They're not aware of it. But they're still having an experience. They're still responding to it. It's still real. It's everything. You can actually tell them something and have them try to repeat back. And because they're in denial, they can't repeat what it's exactly, because there's a part that they are walking out. We have the experience whether we're aware.
Yeah, or I think a more heinous example of that are narcissists, because they can't admit that they've done something wrong or they've done harm. So there is, and there's no cure for narcissism, but there's this level of complete, I think it's beyond denial, it's complete blockage. Because I remember interviewing a very tenured nurse. She was an emergency room nurse. Extremely qualified, but she had somehow, it's hard to tell why this happened, but she had gotten into trouble enough that had been denoted from being a charge nurse. So charge nurses don't necessarily have patients. Charge nurses direct traffic. They basically assign the nurses to take care. They triage the patients. What does that patient needs and who's available, what nurses are available to take care of it, because they're all emergencies if they're in the emergency room, and so all of them are urgent, and you basically just have to take the most urgent and take care of that. So she'd been doing that for well over 20 plus years and was very good at her job at directing traffic. She got into trouble, got demoted from being a charge nurse, was now back to direct patient care, and she had lapsed with her skills. So she had done some harm. It didn't kill the patient, but she had done some harm to a patient because she had misread a doctor's order and given the wrong dosage. Not terribly harmful, but still a mistake. And evidence was in the chart because she had charted it. These are electronic charts, so it's not like not like anything was handwritten and she couldn't read it. She could read it. She read the order because she signed that she read the order because they have to. But then she carried out the order and documented what she did. And she obviously did not follow the order. I put that in front of her for her to see what she did. She looked at it, and you saw this split second of realization on her face, and then her eyes glazed over. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I have never seen that before. It was remarkable. And she came up with the most elaborate story about how someone had hacked into the electronic medical records and changed what she did. So, and not only not just the hack, that's my very simple explanation. She went on for days, it seemed like, about how this hacking takes place and where the country of origin, and it was epic. And so that level of just denial, was just, she then went out on stress. And the bad thing about going out on stress is that, psych evaluation is mandatory. And the other thing about claiming it as a workers' comp case is that HIPAA does not apply to a workers' comp case. If you file a workers' comp claim, all of your records are public records because you've just filed in a public court. So we got her psych eval, and the diagnosis was malignant narcissism.
What other kind of marks would this malignant adjective mean in this case?
I have no idea. I'm not a psychologist.
I've actually encountered this in a YouTube presentation on Donald Trump, actually. And it is a narcissist who gets a sense of power out of being able to cause others to suffer. Mm. So the malignant is tied to the narcissist. I want to feel great, and I feel great when I can see I can make someone hurt.
Yeah. So that's just the worst possible example of what stories do. Because people will, I think we all have the experience. She had the experience of looking at the mistake that she had made. You saw just that flicker of recognition of what she saw, and then denial. And that's the story that came out. So I want to believe, and I know empirical proof in front of me, that all human beings, and maybe all beings in general, have the experience first. Whether they are aware of it or whether they verbalize it or whether it comes out as truth in a story is a different aspect of it. Where we have the opportunity, especially with practice, is to not hold on to, but hold to that moment of the experience and recognize that as truth, as authentic. and realize that however that gets storied later is always after the fact. Staying out of truth or falsehood or narcissism or that's just the order in which beings experience life. And this is what this whole concept is about. It's about your life. Life is this direct experience. What you do with that direct experience is up to you. And I think this practice is what gives us the opportunity to recognize that and to make choices about how that experience gets used.
So if one does the work and builds a practice of being able to hold to the present moment of experience, as just experience, then would that, if one really does the work, would that then help or inform future story making?
It might.
Because the story making is going to go on sooner or later because we need it,
Right.
So I just want.
Well, the ones who, you see that. That's what you're seeing. Where you're seeing that happen is in these koans. This is the story that came out of that experience.
So they're basically the teacher and the student. They're doing stories back and forth, but underneath and permeating through the story is the actual basic experience of the truth of the present moment.
Right. So this is Hogan's explanation, if you will, his story about his direct experience, aimlessly, no goal, nothing to find, nothing to do. It's already there, and I don't know.
And his teacher calls him on that. What's with this aimless wandering story?
Yeah. Is this aimless real?
Yeah.
And I think he's just testing him. So good Zen answer, Zen student. Let's test you a minute. So, what does this matter of your pilgrimage? Again, not knowing. So that's the aim. Is really not to gain any knowledge. It's about just being present, just being right here, right now, taking care of right here, right now, without trying to make it into something other than what it is.
Cool.
But that takes work. That's not something that you learn on the street. Usually, you might. That's not to say, because there are probably some Zen epiphanies that have happened on the street, but it does take, really, being in your breath, counting your breaths, being focused on what is really present, right here, right now, and practicing that over and over and over again until your pilgrimaging is always aimless. And you're always accessing the space of not knowing. That doesn't mean that you're ignorant or stupid or not telling stories, because you do. But it just means that's not what started it. What started it started with the experience.
Okay.
Questions from Zoom? Don, Kirk, Alex. Yes, Don.
You hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Is it part of this being open to experiences, not having any preconceived notions, but be completely open.
Yes, I think that's a good description of it. And it's also something that I remember being taught in the way I was raised, that it was wrong, because the idle mind is the devil's workshop. So being still and open was something was not encouraged in the milieu I was raised in, which is probably why I took a different route, because I was just being blatantly rebellious, and decided, okay, I'm just going to let the devil have my mind and see what he does with it. But that's the key point, is not only being open to it, but being able to stay there. Not that you can stay in any one place, because you can never put the same hand in the same river twice, but that there's not a goal, there's not a trying to make up or tell about that experience. You're just having that experience, and that's one experience, that eternal now that is constantly in that experience without the story. But yeah, openness is a good adjective.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good question. Any other questions before we?
That was a really fun conversation.
We'll have to let Mark chime in, since this was his favorite koan, and he missed it today.
Missed the experience.
I'm sure yeah, I'm sure he's having hopefully better experiences wherever he is.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We can close with that. Then we'll have announcements.